Okay, this is Flow. It is an OSC timeline application. It sends OSC out to anything capable of receiving it, software or hardware. It works with EOS, of course. It is not tailored specifically for EOS. It's a pretty generic OSC timeline app, but it does come pre-populated with familiar EOS targets like channels and groups. So this is the main interface that you see when you start it up. We have the main timeline here. We have the tracks, which will stack vertically here. The library is all of the items that you can drag into the timeline. You can customize their OSC paths here. And then we have the inspector for editing keyframes. So let's dive in. The first thing I'm going to do is open the log window so I can see everything that's going on. I'll set it to show debug messages. And then I'm going to connect it to EOS. So it sends OSC over the network. By default, it's going to send to the localhost at port 9000 UDP. I'm going to change this to TCP port 3037, which is one that EOS is always listening to incoming OSCN. So now we are connected to EOS. We can see an activity indicator over here for when packets are being sent to it. So let's drop in a channel. Okay, so I have channel 1 here. I can move it around on the timeline. I can expand it to show the parameters that it's going to be affecting. So this is building an OSC string, basically. So we have the base channel, EOS chan, value of 1, and then these are strings that are appended to that one. So you can see this is going to change the color and the intensity of channel 1. If I select a keyframe, the inspector populates, and this is a color type of keyframe. I can do quick color selection there, and it's going to fade from red to blue, and here you can actually see the RGB values changing as well. So then the intensity is going to fade from 0 to 100, so let's play it back. So this is going to affect channel 1, and it snaps to 0 and does a fade in to full, and the color's also changing from red to blue. So this is kind of what you get by default with the channel, just to give you an idea of what you can control. Now let's do something that's a little more visible and augmented. So I'm going to start by deleting their RGB and change this from intensity to a zoom parameter. And that will go from 0 to 55 instead, since I know that's the top. And then I can stretch it out on the timeline to make it a longer effect. And let's see what that looks like. Okay. Now let's add a second channel. And I'll put it at the same spot. Do the same thing here. Add a zoom. And let's go 0 to 55. So if I leave it with different fade times, we can see what that looks like, just as we expect. Okay, and the other interesting thing I can do here is if I match the fade times, I can apply a curve to any parameter. So if I do an ease in, ease out, we should see a difference in how 1 and 2 are fading. Great. Okay, so next I'll try to set up a flyout. So I'm going to just undo all the way back to what we had originally. This has full undo support, which is nice. And then I'm going to do the same thing, and instead this time I'm going to do a tilt effect. And what I can do here is make this a 2-second tilt, and I want to go from 0 to, let's say, -100. And let me see what that looks like. So I can actually scrub through on the timeline as well to see how things are going to react. And then I'm going to apply this to all 10 channels, and to save me the time of setting up all these parameters each time, I'm going to set this as my channel template. And I can see here that channels now have a template. So anytime I drag in a new channel, it's going to have these same properties. So I will add all 10 channels, and let's try it out on channel 2. Let's see how those look. Okay, great. I'll fill out the rest. Okay, so I've built out my fan effect on channels 1 through 10, and then set the tilts all back to 0 at the end. And then it's going to loop. I can turn off the looping here if I want to. So let's see what this looks like. Okay. So the other cool thing I can do here is I can change the playback rate. So if I change it to 15, it should run at half the speed now. It's still sending OSC out at the same rate, 30 frames per second. I can edit that separately here. And then of course I can change it to playback faster, but I'll just return it to the default for now. If this were a longer, more complex timeline, I could add bookmarks to make it easy to jump around. For example, I can add one here, and let's add one at the end. And then I can navigate using these. So this goes all the way to the beginning and end, and this will jump between the bookmarks, so I can quickly jump to certain places in my timeline. The other thing I can do is add a stop. So this will actually affect playback, and now it should stop when it hits that. And then I can resume from there. Alright, so I'm going to rename the sequence flyout, and I'm going to zoom out on my timeline so I can see everything. I'm going to actually move these over here so there's no delay in the beginning. Okay, so now I will add a new sequence. I'm going to name this color fade, and I'll load it here. And let me go back to the normal zoom. Okay, so I'm going to add channel 1 and change this to color fade. Let's start at red, and we'll transition to orange. And let's make that 3 seconds. And I'm going to add a new keyframe and change that back to red. So let's set this sequence, defaults to 5 seconds. Let's change it to 3 seconds and see how that looks. Okay. So I got some color pulsing. I will set that as my new channel template and add the rest. Boom. Now everything will be changing color. Okay, so now I have a flyout that is separate from a color fade. Time to add another sequence. I'm going to call this main because I'll combine the two there. And I can also change my sequence up here. Okay, so now with my new sequence, I'll add in the flyout sequence. So now I'm basically nesting sequences together, and you can nest any depth that you want. And the flyout timing, you can change here. I'll make it the full 5 seconds, and let's just make sure that's doing what it should. It's not changing the color, just doing the flyout. And now I can add in the color change. So let's see how that looks. So the flyout's taking the full 5 seconds. The color is just changing over the course of the first second. So of course I can match those two and we'll get the expected result once it completes. Slow color fade over the full 5 seconds. So I can stagger things here, just like in the flyout sequence itself, adjust the timing of a pre-built sequence, and nest these as deep as I like. Okay, so let's look at a more advanced type of keyframe. I'm going to add another sequence just as a placeholder and add channel 1. going to change this back to tilt so we can see it more easily. And let's go from 0 to -130 to 0 again. And I'll stretch that over the full 5 seconds. So it's going to go up and down. So one thing we can do is we can change these to scripting keyframes. So I can actually type in JavaScript here, and if I open up the help, it's going to show me some global variables that I have. So basically, you're just building an OSC string. OSC is going to be the OSC generated from the target and the layer. So if I take the existing OSC, add an equals command, and AB 0 is just going to be the value that it's computed between the keyframe endpoints A and B. And you can have 3 values for every keyframe, so 0 is just the first value. So this should actually do exactly what my previous keyframe was doing. I'll copy this to this one as well. Oops, did I apply that one? I did not. Okay, so now it should look the same if I play it. So it's still spitting out the exact same values. And I can scrub here to quickly check too. So this one's going from 0 to -130. Now I can change this. If I just change it to A instead of the value computed between A and B, it'll just stay at 0. So I've applied that, and now you can see down here that it's always outputting 0. So let's do something more interesting. Let me bring my help back up. Percent. So this is going to be the percentage value between A and B as it is on the timeline. Okay, so nothing's happening over here. And I can see down here that it's getting the right percentage, but it's really only going from tilt from 0 to 1. So I can do some JavaScript math. I'll multiply it by 100. So now it's going to be from 0 to 100. You can see the tilt going backwards there, which means I need to negate it. And now we can see that. So I could quickly do things like make this 200 instead, and it would... Oh, well, I've exceeded the range now. Let's do 50. Now it should tilt less. So now I'm going between there and there. Oops. And it doesn't quite get to the top anymore. Great. So you can have other global variables here, like the seconds of the timeline, the local seconds of just the keyframe, or and you can do any sort of JavaScript here. You could do time of day types of things, or if your OSC endpoint takes a very specific type of string, you can customize all that here with a scripting keyframe. So you may have noticed this little audio icon over here. Another cool thing that I can do with Flow is import audio files. So I'm going to drag in this audio file here. This supports all the popular formats. I can set the beginning and end clip visually or enter the times below. And this one also has time code embedded into it. I know that that's on channel 2, so I'll import that. And now I can see the waveform on my timeline. I also see the audio time instead of the main timeline here. And I can line up triggers with the waveforms. So let me drop in a sub. I'm going to set this to fill the whole timeline. And here I have a hit. And let me add a few more. And then we'll play this back. So these are the trigger type of keyframe. It simply sends the OSC command you specify on this line. there's no value. So let's see what that looks like. Great. There's another way that I can easily add audio triggers to the timeline. Let me show you how. First, I'll delete this track and add it back. I'll expand this one, and let me add a sub 2. And this one I'll just limit to the main part of the song. Okay, I'm going to delete these keyframes. And now you see the numbers that show up on the tracks here. These will show up for tracks 1 through 9, and they correspond to the keyboard buttons for those numbers. So as I tap the number 1, it's going to add triggers, and as I tap the number 2, it's going to add triggers to this track. So I can play the audio file, and let's see how my timing is. Just like that. There's another way to play back sequences within Flow, and it's more of a busking view. So let's switch to the matrix view. By default, you'll get the first sequence populated in here. This is an 8x8 grid of buttons, and you can load any sequence into it. When I tap it, it's going to play back the flyout, just as we expect, and you can configure it to run at a certain frame rate, to repeat or not repeat, and you can assign different buttons to do different things. So by default, just clicking on it is going to pause and play it, but I can do a shift click to jump to the beginning. Then I can load other sequences in here. So I have a zoom effect that I can run just as a ripple. Then I can add in our color effect and play that back. And I can make it not repeat and always play from the start, and the click is play. So it'll just always play through that every time I click it. So it's kind of like the same options you have with subs in EOS. Fairly configurable. Okay, we're back in our main flyout sequence, and Flow is sending OSC over to EOS live, and you can run it just like this. But there's another way to get this data into EOS as well that doesn't require Flow to be running. We can actually export to EOS. Let's try an effect first. So it's going to pre-populate with the sequence name, and I'll save it. I can change the effect number, adjust the time offset, give it a label, and press the export. It'll end up creating a file like this, ASCII effects for all the channels, and let's go ahead and import that into EOS. So let me go back to Q1, and I will import our flyout, merge it, and now I have effect 1 flyout. Let's apply that. And as you can see, we have the same sort of effect. I can see it running here. And let's take a look at that. So you can see it creates a step-based effect. And now we can look at a different type of export. Let's do the same thing, but this time we'll export it as an EOS cue list. Same thing here, we can choose the cue list number, the label, any time offsets. We could also use timecode from the audio, but in this case we don't have any. So I've exported that. It'll look something like this. Generate a CSV file. Let's import that into EOS. Okay, now we have our cue list, and let's play it back. All right. And finally, we can export as an EOS show control list. So here's what the sequence looks like. And we'll export it here. and import it into EOS. And now we have all those hits in our show control list. Thanks for listening.